Hey guys, welcome to Build the Roster, the show where I come up with a hypothetical roster for a game that by the grace of God alone will never exist. Now folks, we've all seen all sorts of mascot fighters from video games and cartoons and movies. I think Digimon had their own mascot fighter. But I've got a question for the cowards who make these games. Where is the literal mascot fighter? Well, that's what we're gonna make today. We're building the roster for Super Smash Burgers. Now, the first question we've got to ask ourselves is how big is our roster gonna be? Well, let's take a look at some other games in the genre. The original Super Smash Bros. Had only 12 characters. That's just not enough. But Super Smash Bros. Ultimate had 532 characters. I think they turned me into a Mii skin last week, so that's probably too many. I think we're gonna go with the nice round number of until the bit gets old. Now the rules for our roster section is gonna be really simple. If a mascot makes me hungry, then they qualify. The Taco Bell dog makes me hungry. The Energizer Bunny does not. Get it, got it, Gucci. Let's dive into this. Now, let's get the obvious picks out of the way first, folks. Ronald McDonald and the Burger King. Now, Ronnie and the King are like the Mario and Sonic of food. These are the two guys you slap right on the box, making mean faces at each other, like they're on a 2007 gangsta shirt. Now, Ronald would be a very in-your-face character to pay tribute to his Mugen appearance. But I'm thinking that the Burger King would be more of a setup fighter. He'd be a slippery little devil to pay tribute to his old stealth games. Now, obviously, with two big franchises like that, you can't stop at just one character apiece, especially when both McDonald's and Burger King have such a rich library of characters to pull from. But we're gonna limit ourselves to just one more character from each franchise. From the BK lore, I think we have to go with Wheels from the BK Kids. Now, I was tempted to go with Kid Vid because he's the coolestest of the BK Kids, but a badass high-tech wheelchair? That has all sorts of potential for special moves, like a side B where he charges forward, or an up B where he's got rockets in his wheelchair. This isn't even a bit anymore, that just sounds like a really cool idea. So sadly, Kid Vid'll have to settle for assist trophy status. Now the choice is much harder from the McDonald's roster, with characters like Grimace, Birdie, the Hamburglar, or even Officer Big Mac all being great picks. But this is a video on the internet, so we have to pick Mac tonight. Every roster needs that weird pick, those deep cuts. And what deeper cut is there than a character that the vaporwave scene has beaten to death, brought back to life using ancient techs purchased from an abandoned mall, and then beaten back to death several times over. In fact, if I put Mac tonight in the thumbnail, I bet I'll get 17% more clicks than I otherwise would've. Now let's step out of the drive-thru and into the grocery store for a while. Our next roster pick is Mr. Peanut. Now, I was real tempted to pick Mr. Peanut Jr. because every roster needs that new hotness. But instead, we're gonna go with Mr. Peanut Sr. to pay tribute to the boldest nut in advertising history, and to put his full ness on display. After that, every roster needs its token big guy, so you know we had to include the Jolly Green Giant, who'd be slow with no up recovery, but would pack quite a wallop of a punch. Jolly Green Giant is a character who'd be perfect to get an Echo Fighter, but I couldn't decide between the Kool-Aid Man and Tony the Tiger. But I ultimately decided to go with the Michelin Man. Pulpus, you might be saying. You can't eat a tire. You're a big tabagool. A big tabagool might be able to eat a tire, but the rest of us, we're not eating tires. Well, you're right about that, but fun fact, the Michelin stars that restaurants are given are actually given out by the fucking tire company. You can Google that shit. Go ahead. it's fucking true. So I think the Michelin Man is a great wink and a nod to possibly the lessest known yummy mascot. Now let's head on down the cereal aisle for a while, because every roster needs a character that's so fast that you accidentally sprint off of the stage on those stages that have a bunch of shit going on all at once. And both the best candidates for that role are in the cereal aisle. First, we've got the Trix Rabbit, who'd be a pretty straightforward rushdown character. A perfect choice for your little cousin with ADHD. Our other crunchy champion is Lucky the Leprechaun, who could use his pot of gold and rainbows, as well as his many marshmallows, to be an effective zoner. Just for shiggies, that shits and giggles for the unaffiliated, let's go ahead and include Smacky the Frog in there. Now some of you might be saying, Popus, Smacky the Frog, he's a lover, not a fighter. He'd never be in a fighting game unless he was there trying to tell everyone to get along. Well, hey, you got me there, Buster. So I'm gonna go ahead and include Smacky as my one just for me pick. I could easily fill the rest of this roster with morning mascots, but we're going to limit ourselves to just one more cereal mascot. And I think that the monster cereals offer a fun aesthetic not often seen in the mascot world.
Oh shit, Freddy Fazbear actually. Put Freddy Fazbear in the game.
Admittedly, I thought about including Frankenberry and Blueberry as a Sheik/Zelda situation because of how good it is when you mix those two cereals together.
Legitimately try that shit.
But I think an idea like that would help sell a season of DLC. Plus, that sounds fucking expensive. Instead, we're gonna use this as our weird pick and go with the Yummy Mummy, who's got yummy right there in his name, so it'd be weird not to pick him when I said we were picking the yummiest mascots. Going back to the drive-thru, every crossover fighter needs a villain, and who better to act as the villain than the notorious Long John Silver? Who even eats at Long John Silver's? Who keeps them in business? That right there is the plot to your single-player story. Plus, Long John Silver seems like the only mascot who I would expect to carry a firearm on his person at all times. Of course, every villain needs a couple of henchmen, so we're going to go with back-to-back pizza mascots, the Noid, and real-life pizza-themed supervillain, Papa John. Now, I'll admit, this roster has been a total sausage fest so far, so let's go ahead and diversify our roster up a bit. Now, if we were making this game 10, 20 years ago, then Aunt Jemima would be the first draft pick. But sadly, we as a culture have decided that syrup just ain't as good on pancakes as peanut butter and bananas is. So we'll be giving that roster spot to Miss Chiquita instead, who would throw little banana peels on the ground to make people trip up and make me do the funny whee. Moving on, I'm not sure there's an older mascot on this roster than Betty Crocker herself, and honestly, my credibility as a YouTuber should be put into question for taking this long to put her on the roster. I'm sorry, Queen, I'll bake a cake in your honor tonight. Now, Pebbles Flintstone might be a weird pick, because she's just a little baby. But I watched the Rugrats every night as a kid, and I've seen what those babies can do if you motivate them. Put Pebbles in the game.
Bro, that voice getting annoying as fuck. Hang on, I'ma switch it up.
And then to round out this section, we're gonna go with Flo the Progressive Insurance mascot. Now, she might not be a very hungry mascot, but I sure am thirsty anytime I see her on the screen. Now, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to have a mascot crossover video game without Chuck E. Cheese, a mascot who runs a pizzeria that has video games in it. What do you think, we're running amateur hour at Willie's Chocolate Experience here? Give him a side B where he throws a skee ball. What more could you ask for? Then finally, for the base game, you gotta end on a strong note, and I can think of no stronger note than Pepsi Man, the hero of the greatest game in the history of the PlayStation. I said at the top of this thing, in a different voice, that you put Ronald McDonald and the Burger King on the box art. Well, Well, I didn't mention that right in between them is the goddamn Pepsi Man, okay? So that's our base roster, who, just to remind you, consists of Betty Crocker, the Burger King, Chuck E. Cheese, Flo from Progressive, the Jolly Green Giant, Long John Silver, Lucky the Leprechaun, Mac the Knight, the Michelin Man, Miss Chiquita, Mr. Peanut, the Noid, Papa John, Pebbles Flintstone, Pepsi Man,
Ronald McGoddamn-Donald!
Smacky the Frog, the Trix Rabbit, Wheels from the BK Kids, and the Yummy Mummy.
I'm from the festival.
Now, I could go right into the DLC because at this point I gotta commit to the bit, but first I wanted to go over the possible stages that this could have because I'm gonna commit to the goddamn bit. Now, first of all, you gotta have a McDonald's play stage. Heck, you could have two play places. Maybe you've got a ball pit for Burger King and the tubes that were way up in the air for McDonald's. Next up, I'd include the beach from the Pepsi Man commercial because that commercial had movies in it. To represent the monster cereals, I'd say we wholesale rip off the Luigi's Mansion stage from Smash Bros. Only slap a bunch of cereal mascots in there and then beg Nintendo to try and challenge General Mills or Kellogg's or whoever the fuck's lawyers, thus sparking the collapse of IP law so I can finally publish my Count Chocula X Spider-Man gay romance fictions as an actual novel. The fact that I was able to deliver that line in one take, fucking go me. For Chuck E. Cheese, you know we've got to have the main stage as a stage, with the performing band in the background acting as stage hazards. Now, any of these stages would be neat, but there's one stage that everyone can agree on. Just include the Waffle House parking lot. I'm not even kidding, this isn't a bit. That should be in every fighting game ever. Why the fuck can't I fight in the Waffle House parking lot? Are you kidding me? You mean to tell me I've got to get off my goddamn ass, get in the car, and drive to a fucking Waffle House to get in a fight in the parking lot? I'm sorry, I thought this was 2025 America! That other voice was even more exhausting than the first one. What's a weird voice I can end this video on?
Which finally leaves us with our final season of DLC, because I think the joke's starting to run a bit thin at this point. Earlier I mentioned having Frankenberry and Blueberry as a stance fighter type thing, but that actually sounds like it would be really fucking expensive, so just put in Count Chocula instead and call it a day. Next up, I made the joke about Willy's chocolate experience earlier, but I say we actually put Willy Wonka in the game. The room where everything was edible's inclusion as a stage alone makes it worth putting the Wonkster in the game. And I can already see him being the character that reinvents the meta. All the kids at EVO, they would say, oh wow, gee whiz, that guy over there just got wonked by the Wonkster.
Oompa, loompa, doompa dee dicker. We're going to spike the chocolate with liquor.
Now, we included two villainous pizza mascots earlier, so it seems only fair that we include a good pizza mascot to balance everything out. Unfortunately, instead, we will be picking Little Caesar, who is currently wanted in 17 states for charges including, but not limited to, second-degree murder, assault, arson, sales of narcotics and firearms to children, and ripping the tags off of mattresses. So unfortunately, I've only got the attention span for two more characters, and I can think of two more deserving names, the Big Chungus and Kratos from God of War, who, they're characters, and they look like they eat a lot, so fuck it, put them in a game, city.
Anyways, that's my game. Make the dog from the Bush's Baked Beans commercials the announcer. Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!